Hey everybody, welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's June 13th. Rob Ryersey, I think this is going to be a day that some people think a lot about.
Yeah.
We usually have in the podcast all kinds of conversations about the common good and what it means, especially politics. We chit-chat about the weather, where it's beautiful in Minneapolis. I'm guessing it's lovely in Springdale, Arkansas.
Absolutely.
But boy, this is not a day only to talk about the weather. This is a day where there's some solemnity. I like that word, solemnity, to all that's going on. Donald Trump will walk into a courthouse in Miami, Florida, and turn himself over to the United States Marshals, and then have someone tell him, "You are under arrest on 38 federal felony charges." And his freedoms will be limited from that day until he's either served a sentence or is found not guilty or has made a pleading that has secured him his freedom. He will be detained by the United States government. It's just a remarkable thing, all caused and created by Donald Trump's behavior and all that. But we'll talk a bit about that today. So our conversation today is going to be trying to help us understand the indictment and talk to our friends who are still caught up in supporting Trump and can't quite see it clearly. And man, I have a lot of friends. I got to tell you, a lot of friends who are still. If one were to think about the grieving process as one of the lenses by which you could understand what's going on right now, you might know that people, whenever something harsh happens to us, we deny that maybe a little bit, you bargain a bit, you're sad for a little bit, you negotiate, is there some better way, before it sort of settles in. And I know a lot of people who I think, if I were interpreting their behavior currently, that's kind of how they feel about it. That's sort of what's happening to them. So I am shockingly pleased that this is happening, not because I'm happy that Donald Trump will be a criminal federal detained person, even though he'll be free to move about the cabin of the country. But it just, his behavior has been so bad on so many situations that it just seems like this is something that had to happen. So how are you feeling about this June 13th important day?
Yeah, I mean, Doug, you're coming in with an understandable and probably appropriate tone about the solemnity of this. This has happened already in New York, where Donald Trump was charged with criminal charges there and arraigned. Those are state charges. These are federal charges. And it's the first time in history that a former president of the United States has been charged with federal crimes, and indicted and will be arraigned today. And you're coming in with an appropriate amount of solemnity, because this is historic. It's a big deal. I'm not feeling the solemnity.
You got Mark's attitude, lock him up kind of attitude. Is that
Yeah.
what you're...
I'm not. I don't. I'm not. See, that has a certain amount of like kind of vengeance, or I don't not Mark, that you've got some vengeance. I don't think that. I just think the whole thing's just absolutely hilarious. I mean, it's just so funny. Like everything that has taken place. It's so funny to me that after all of this, the thing that's gotten Donald Trump is that he can't keep his big fat mouth shut.
Yeah.
That he wants to brag about, that he wants to show off to some reporters.
Yeah.
And he wants to settle some kind of personal score with General Milley. It's just hopefully we're going to break it all down. But I have that sense of this guy deserves every bit of the ridicule that is coming his way.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with that. Actually, I think his behavior has just been so atrocious. Truly, I would just say top to bottom, from the way he started running for office in 2015, just broke a lot of the norms. The way he spoke about other Americans, the way he
Mm-hmm.
spoke about judges, the way he talked about other presidential candidates, the sort of way he was about all of that, I just found to be um, unbecoming of a leader of any kind,
Yeah.
and have
Yes.
been struck, as we have talked about many times in traveling the country and on this podcast. Donald Trump would not be hired to run any business in this country that has any
Yes.
reputation. Donald
Yes.
Trump would not be allowed to be the chief executive of anything with any
Yes.
significant public persona, because his behavior, the things he has said and done, would just be fully disqualifying
Yes.
to customers and a board. And yet, there are people who are so hardwired into their political identity, so hate Democrats, so love Republicans, whatever it is that motivates them, that they'd be like, no, 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 he's literally my guy.
Yeah.
literally,
Yes.
literally my guy. So, all right, we'll spend a little time talking about this stuff. I'd like to see Walter here. Walter, nice to see you. I don't know you personally, but a great question. Why are we ignoring the Biden crime family? Well, because the Biden family has not been indicted on 38 federal charges.
Is it 38 or
Walter,
37?
I think there was.
I don't
Well,
know.
that's a good question. I think there were 38, but maybe somebody should check
Oh, I
us.
don't want to. I mean, I
You don't
thought there
want to
was
take
30.
anything away from,
I
from what he
Yeah, I
earned.
thought there was 37, but if there's
Okay.
38, I would be thrilled about that. But
Okay. On because the Bidens have not been charged on
yeah.
multiple
Scores.
scores of. You get to use that 4 scores and 3 scores sort of problem here. That's why. But we'll talk about the whataboutism. So, Walter, I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that up. That's something
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to talk about. Why not this? Why not that? I mean, I'm going to make an argument. I'll make it repeatedly over the next what I think will be the next 311 days. Here's my bet, Rob. Within 311 days, Donald Trump will plead guilty to a version of these charges. He will not go to trial. He will strike a deal with the federal government once it's been determined by all of his legal proceedings that the charges against him have evidence behind them, and he will be convicted. He will be negotiating
Yeah.
a result to this case. Look, that is what happens in the great majority of federal cases anyway, because the way the federal government tends to work. And this particular case, this is rarely do they have this kind of evidence, like truly, literally,
Yes.
this
Yeah.
kind of evidence. So we'll get to
I
all of
mean,
that.
they don't often have the accused on tape admitting to
And look, of all the things that can happen in this world, one of the things that I want, I certainly hope that people find some commonality. I hope people can build a trust in equal justice under the laws to the degree that that's possible in the United States. I hope all of that stuff happens. But maybe even long term, for just the culture of our society, more importantly, is that we stop using the phrase on tape.
Oh.
We have not used tapes.
This took a much different turn than I expected. Yeah, I know.
We have not used tapes in so very long.
Yeah.
It is recorded. People can all say there's a recording, there's a video recording, but journalists.
What do you say when you end a phone call? Do you hang up?
I just stop talking and hang up.
You hang up.
I don't say goodbye.
I know, but I think we should stop using the phrase "hang up."
I'm ending the call. the call has been ended, like one of those Siri voices. But anyway, caught on tape. Yes. So there are digital recordings.
I'm with you. Yeah.
There may be a place where Donald Trump has also robbed a 7-Eleven and they're still using old VHS tapes.
Oh, seriously.
Inside the security cameras. I'm not putting that beyond him. So he may actually be on tape for a crime.
Yeah.
But in this case, he is digitally recorded. All right. So
I
The,
mean, okay, we're gonna talk about the serious stuff. Can we talk about the not serious stuff just
yes.
real first?
Hmm.
First, I mean, the photo. Like, hopefully, everyone's read the indictment.
Yeah.
I've read every page of the 49-page indictment.
Yep.
It
Me too.
was
I wonder if
a
Rick, have you had a chance to take a peek at it? Walter,
oh,
good to
it
see you here.
is
Jim, hey others, if you
just
haven't yet, there's some links around. You can get them quick.
oh
Give it a quick read. We'd love to
yeah,
have
and
you,
even if you
Mike,
just
all the
and
others reading.
you've probably seen the pictures. The pictures are amazing. There is a storage unit of some kinds, a closet of some kind, in which there are stacked boxes and boxes and boxes of documents.
I'm putting the image up now for those who are watching on the video. If you just
Oh,
on
do you
the
have the one?
on
This
the
is the
podcast,
stage I was going to
you
get to.
okay? Yeah,
Do you
which
have
one
the
you want?
one of the storage closet?
Where it's the
No, that's the
spillage?
bathroom. No, not this one with the spillage. Come on, one more. You got one more?
No, I've got these three.
No. There's one that includes
Okay, you
in the
keep talking,
storage closet.
big cat, and I will go find it.
In the storage closet, Doug, there is a copying machine. There's a copier. There's a Xerox machine.
Xerox machine, good one.
It is. There's a copier where you could. In these newfangled copying machines, you can, and making your point about being on tape, you can make digital copy. You can like send it to an email address from these things. You don't
Love
have
it.
to walk out with sheaves of paper. You don't have to walk out with boxes and boxes and boxes of documents. You can put them all in a PDF.
Good
Pop
point.
that thing into Evernote. Have a little Google Drive folder that you upload them to. I Who has been in that room?
Okay.
Who has access to those documents?
Mm-hmm.
Has that copy machine been used?
Yeah.
What email addresses has that copier sent documents to? And
Uh,
what are those documents?
and
Have those
you're
have
suggesting they've perhaps taken a look at such things.
I'm suggesting that I has there been foreign nationals who have visited that room? We know there's
Mm-hmm.
been foreign nationals who have visited Mar-a-Lago. Um, have there been? Is there? Yeah. See, here we go. See
There
this
you
right
go.
here?
There's your photo.
There's right behind this box right here.
Right there.
I don't know. You can't
I
see my cursor,
can't
but
see my
there is
cursor either, but
a
you can hear my cursing.
yeah, there is a copy machine right back here
Yeah.
underneath this drainage pipe. Um,
Yes. Right.
At
Yeah.
least
So
they were smart enough to put these on pallets. That's I hadn't noticed the pallets before. They have them, propped up lest there be flooding.
it
So,
is truly.
anyways, my point is, we've no like I think that someone has been in this room and their job is to digitize these records.
Yeah.
And that copy machine is being used for those purposes, that even if they are physically returned to the National Archives, Donald Trump and
They exist. Yep. Yep.
others
If
in
not
his
if not in
circle,
original format, yeah, there's probably look, the
they're
degree to which
digitized.
Donald Trump has said in the indictment, they're my documents. I want to keep them the way that his aides were saying he's really precious about these. You can just sort of see, like a little boy with a baseball card collection, really wants to keep them to him, but doesn't care how they're stored or treated, right?
Yeah.
To the point earlier, just doesn't care that they're in spaces like this, or that they're falling about, or
Yep.
that they are. Let me try to find that picture of them tipped over here, which I just find to be the most atrocious of all the atrocious ones. But there's a guitar in there and some jackets with plastic on them, and then boxes truly spilled, and one of the covers there says confidential documents inside, spilled on the floor. The degree to which Donald Trump wanted these and kept them, there's little chance that he did not make a digitized copy of that thing, that he
Yes.
didn't pop it on a photocopier, shoot it with a phone, or used his aides used a little PDF app on their phones and get a copy of it. So Rob,
Yes.
I'm with you, but hey,
Yeah.
could we also
Can
just talk for a minute about
we're talking about the bathroom, right?
in the non-serious
Oh,
side of all of
okay.
this?
Yeah.
Um, the decor again
Oh,
at at at
Mar-a-Lago.
Trump's
Oh,
um I
oh,
don't know if it's
it's
still
just
fair to
hideous.
continue calling it bed bug infested. That was a while ago. I think they have that under control, but previously bed bug infested place. The decor is just
It's
horrible. So you're
oh,
seeing these pictures of this
oh my
stuff, and
goodness.
the one in the bathroom,
Oh, the
which
bathroom picture
yeah,
is the
here it is.
absolute best. Wow. The bathroom picture is the absolute best. So there's some things to note here. I actually think I'm trying to figure out is
Are you sweating, by
which
the way, right
I am
now?
sweating. Yeah, yeah, I am
If you're only have the privilege of hearing our sultry voices, Rob just pulled out a at the ready terry cloth hand towel and that he
dabbed
keeps
myself.
nearby and
Uh,
dabbed his sweaty
yeah,
face.
I'm
I'm sorry
I'm
for the
yeah.
heat.
There's a perfect storm of things here happening here. One, I went to the gym this morning,
Oh,
raising my body temperature.
great.
Two, I happen to be the kind of person who just can sweat like a pig sitting still.
Mhm.
And three, I podcast from a room that doesn't have really great insulation or air conditioning. So,
Hey,
yeah, so I'm a little bit warm.
at the risk of being a word police here, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe I'm in an attitude
Um,
today.
mm.
Did you know that pigs don't actually sweat? That's the thing. That's why they roll in the mud.
No, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
pigs don't have sweat glands. This is part of the
Oh,
reason why people who don't eat pork are like, yeah, you don't eat pork because of the way that meat and the sweat. That's why they have pig pens that have water and mud in them.
hmm,
Why we have a phrase, sweat like a pig.
yeah.
The non-sweaters
Yeah.
sweat
Yeah.
sweat
So,
like
anyways,
pigs.
I
Anyway,
I'm trying to figure out. I can't decide the most iconic picture of the Trump presidency. I think there's three. I think there's three options. One is him yelling at the kid mowing the lawn. I think that is. I
what
think
is
that
this one?
is when Trump was president and the kid came and wanted to mow the lawn and he was yelling at the kid
I don't know
mowing the lawn
anything
of the
about
White
Donald
House.
Trump yelling at a kid mowing the lawn.
Oh, Doug, this is like when we did the this guy's got to go, and
Really?
you couldn't remember Kofefi. Uh,
Oh,
oh,
yeah, yeah, I forgot about Kofefi
just
too.
iconic moments of the Trump presidency. Another one
Okay.
is
Yelled at a boy. Why is
yeah,
there a boy coming up to the White House, knocking on
because
the door, trying to pick up summer work?
his dream was to mow the lawn at the White House. So
And you just
yeah,
get to
it's
do that?
amazing.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a whole other
yeah, yeah.
story.
Um, Another one is the uh, meal served to national championship football team with the really luxe spread of McDonald's. Just amazing. And Trump standing with a portrait of Abraham Lincoln behind him, with silver trays of Big Macs and chicken McNuggets laid out in front of him. Absolutely amazing. This picture right here.
Yeah, the bathroom photo.
This bathroom photo. Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. First of all, there's a chandelier in the bathroom.
I was going to say a gaudy, giant chandelier, which just looking at the height of the boxes would, for some people like me, be about head height.
Yeah,
It is
it's
a
low.
low hanging
Yes.
chandelier,
Yes.
which also tells you something. Anybody who knows interior design at a site like this, you always want that chandelier to be at least 8 feet high,
Yeah.
and just no reason for it to be a chandelier if it's going to be a 6 feet high
Yeah. Now,
pole.
so you think, okay, a bathroom that's going to have a chandelier, this is going to be a nice bathroom, right?
What one would hope.
Um, can we note two things, maybe purchased at Dollar General?
Uh huh.
One being the shower rod.
Shower rod. I noticed it too.
The tension
Just
shower
a
rod,
tension shower rod.
I mean, you go down to the Dollar General and
Yes.
you get one of these,
Yep.
and the other is the garbage can. I don't, Doug, have you bought a garbage can lately?
Not.
Garbage cans are expensive.
Are they?
Yeah, the
Huh.
only ones that are not expensive are like the thin. small white plastic ones,
Yeah, like the
like
one that
the
we're seeing in this
super
photo.
exactly.
Uh,
I mean, it's just hilarious. Here, and I don't know, Doug, if you've noticed, but the shower is full of boxes as well. You
I
can
see
see
that now. I
yeah,
hadn't noticed it before, that
yeah,
sneaking above it. So they
yes.
literally don't just have them in the bathroom,
They're in the yeah.
they're in the shower.
This is like
These are
if Donald Trump were, because we know that he liked to travel with his boxes, because as a part of the indictment, um, what we assume is Melania
oh,
told him that like there wasn't going to be enough room on the plane because she had overpacked for their vacation in New Jersey.
and was sending a message through his aides, "Hey, he's not
Saying,
bringing his boxes this time
yeah,
because we're full with family stuff.
yeah,
No more hoarder boxes," which truly
yeah,
does go to something, Rob. I know we're having fun with
mm,
that, and we should, because you got to do this before the former president of the United States is indicted on 30 some odd federal charges. But that's a real tell that Donald Trump so much wanted to bring these along with him so he
yes,
could be going through them. Now, had he been simply going through them because he's like, "Hey, I've got work to do. I have to separate out my important personal files from the ones owned by the federal government," which we'll get to in a minute about why
yeah,
declassification actually has nothing to do with this.
yep,
That's not the point of the
yep,
charges. But that he was truly carrying these things around with him and traveling with him with them. Like they had their heads and
uh,
minds on these boxes, Rob. And we're not talking about for like a weekend. Like, hey, we just got moved back down here after I lost the election and had to leave,
mhm,
the public housing of the White House, and now I have to go live in this place. This wasn't the 2 weeks after he moved out of the White House. This was like a year and a half after he left the White House. He's still carrying the boxes around with him and not wanting other people to know where they are and not wanting people to look at them and to go through them. And he's sorting through them, which truly does give you a mindset of the person separate from everything
yeah,
else that's important in all of this. Whatever's going on in the mind of that human being, that blessed, loved child of God, light of the world, salt of the earth, Donald Trump, this guy has a fixation with these things, which sadly, now I'm getting serious about this for a moment, sadly, is probably the motivation for why he would not return government property back to the government and then
yeah,
participated in a criminal conspiracy to lie to the FBI and the Justice Department about it because he wanted them. I mean, just setting up who is this person and would you trust this person with important things? I just honestly don't know how someone could.
yeah.
Okay, so now back to the decor. Back to rate this room.
Oh my goodness. It's just I like this feels like such like this could be right up there with the McDonald's picture from the White House in terms of just summing up the Trump presidency. Here we have, boxes of classified documents in a bathroom that has a chandelier and a tension rod shower curtain.
Yes, the
It's
bathroom just
just
makes no sense. Like just as a
right.
design element, the chandelier, the sconce on the wall that is sticking out, the
Yeah.
the heavy kind of fake marble look, and then the
Hmm.
the curtain rod with like it just honestly makes no sense. And why they're not using the bathroom as it is, why it's now taken over for these purposes. And it could just
Yeah.
be the flow of the place, whatever, maybe the fact that it's in a bathroom. But here's the thing, Rob, this looks like a working bathroom, my man. There are hand towels, there are Kleenex. It's not as if they took over a room and said, we're going to turn it into a storage room.
I
They've
mean, this
kept a
is like
path to the
in case
sink and they have kept a path to the toilet. There
in
is no doubt that someone was
oh,
text
oh,
proofing from that room staring at those boxes. Here's the other
oh,
thing that gets me about all these pictures, Rob, and we go through them and you
oh,
think, okay, there's one of the stage, there's one of the bathroom, there's one, as we showed a minute ago, of the copy room, there's one of the spilled documents.
yeah,
People took these photos.
yeah,
They took the photos and then they gave them to the government,
yep,
or the government found them on these
yeah,
devices that they've
yeah.
taken.
Could we go? Could we? Yes, that's a really important point. Could I make a really not important point? Something
Yes.
that really bothers me, because I have a little bit of I don't know if I don't know if it's the OCD or what you know. Yeah, I mean, jump back to the stage picture if you wouldn't mind.
Mhm.
I listen. You're gonna move a ton of boxes.
Mhm.
You're the president of the United States or his
Former.
representative, former president of the United States or his representative. Are you gonna just buy a mass lot of boxes
That match.
that match?
Yes.
I mean, you just
It's
like
like
you're checking with your friends, "Hey, I'm moving. Do you have any boxes I could use?" Like, how do
100
these boxes not match?
100%. I thought the same thing. I'm now zooming in on it for those who have the privilege of looking at this. There's
How do
like
you not
and
how
they're
did
not
you just
even
not
moving
buy
some of them aren't
a
even moving boxes. Some of them literally are boxes that were like reams of paper came in them and they're
Yes,
repurposing them. It is shocking. You are right. Like that idea that they picked boxes that didn't even have the sensibility to be like document storage boxes. It,
it's
it, it's
unbelievable.
it's 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 unbelievable. It's unbelievable. All right, so let's talk about some important
Okay.
parts of all
So I
this.
know you want to talk about how do we respond to people who aren't buying this. And so so I to help maybe set this up, um I posted on Facebook,
Mhm,
on Instagram, and then it gets posted on Facebook because I don't post on Facebook too much. I posted on Instagram uh one of my favorite pictures, which is a little,
mhm,
little Photoshop thing that I put together with uh, Trump in a orange jumpsuit with
mhm.
prison bars holding a number. And the number is 11,670, which is funny because that's the number of votes he lost by in Georgia, and will be indicted for
Yeah,
his criminal activity related to election interference there. So I posted that picture, as I did when he was indicted in New York, and I will when he's indicted
in
uh,
Georgia.
in Georgia, and again by the federal government for his
Yeah.
role on January 6th. So I posted this, and a gentleman that I knew a long time ago, um, a guy actually was Vanessa's pastor growing
Mhm.
up, pastored the church that Vanessa went to throughout her life, and a Christian man. He replied, and Doug, I'm gonna read his reply to you, um, and let this kind of set the stage for, okay, how do we talk about this? So all I did, no commentary, no comment at all, just posted a picture that's a little Photoshop, a little haha of Donald Trump.
But that
Um,
is worth at least 1,000 words. That's a thousand
oh,
word
here we
post.
go. So Joe says this: another cheap shot from Rob Ryerson. Why don't you post comments about the 33,000 emails Hillary Clinton erased from her two illegal servers? Or how the FBI behind James Comey lied about the supposed Russian collusion hoax? Possibly you could post how Hillary Clinton paid Christopher Steele $12 million dollars to make a false dossier. Or you could post how Joe Biden is allowing illegals to infiltrate our country, or how he received $5 million dollars from the Ukraine, or how Red China has paid him and Hunter large amounts of money. I could go on and on. How about dealing with all of this truth?
Mhm.
I could go on and on and on the corrupt
Mm.
administration we now have. So I replied to this comment uh, with a laughing emoji. Um, and so then Joe comments again and said, I would say clean up the Democratic administration before you even begin to throw stones. Biden is a criminal,
Mhm.
and that has been proven.
Yeah.
The only thing that is saving him now is the media, and the Democrats are in charge. I have no desire to be affiliated with an organization like this. The facts I presented to you are completely documented. It is your choice who you stand with. And I replied to that with a laughing emoji. And Joe replied about an hour ago, sad indeed, Rob. Sad indeed. So,
Well,
Doug, if I was interested in you know,
helping Joe.
helping Joe as opposed to just, kind of dismissing Joe's comments with a laughing emoji, what would be your tack? How do you respond to the whataboutism?
Look, we all have a Joe. At least I think many of the people listening to this, watching this, would say, "Oh, they're like, oh no, I've had that same conversation, almost verbatim, same talking points, same words." So has been since Donald Trump's legal woes started, a heavy effort to try to make Joe Biden a criminal. Okay, so if you're not familiar with this, how the Hunter Biden laptop fits in, how Burisma, an oil company, supposedly paid the Bidens tens of millions of dollars to fire prosecutors. Here's what I'd suggest. If you have friends who talk about that stuff, learn enough about it. Just do a simple Google search, just read some things about it so that you know what it is that they're referring to, right? Because then at least you can respond with a sense that I know what you're talking about, and that's not what I want to talk about right now.
Yep.
Here's the fallacy in the argument. If you want to say we should have a country where there's equal justice under law, where somehow law is moved forward, where law is supported, where if people commit crimes that are proven, then they're going to receive consequences from the state or federal government about that. If that's what you want, what you don't want to start saying is, until all the criminals are charged, no criminals should be charged.
Yeah.
Consider that world for a minute. What convicted criminal in any jail or prison anywhere wouldn't say, I know some people that you didn't charge. I know some people you looked into, but you didn't bring charges. I know some people you tried to charge and then pulled back and stopped. So therefore, I should not be in jail. So at one basic point, one could say, hey, any crimes that were committed by Joe Biden, by Hillary Clinton, by Bill Clinton, by George Bush, by Barack Obama, any of these crimes for anybody running for president or vice president should be charged. And until we get to those, we shouldn't have a moratorium on charging people with crimes. This is the piece that just I don't get. And if what they want, Joe or my friend Casey or the person that we had in the chat here, what was it, Lyle? I don't know. Walter. What they want is for you to say, hey, the criminal justice system should look at these crimes. For sure. Do you know who's looking into the Bidens? The Justice Department. Do you know who looked into Hillary Clinton? The Justice Department. Do you know who investigated Hillary Clinton? The FBI. Do you know who did not prosecute Hillary Clinton? The Justice Department between 2017 and 2021. The Justice Department led by Bill Barr, by Jeff Sessions, by that other Rosenstein guy, they did not actually bring charges against Hillary Clinton. They did not bring charges against the Biden family for things that they said happened 4 and 5 years earlier. So the curious question for all of these people is, do you want a moratorium on all crimes until all criminals are charged? And why did the Trump Justice Department not find it worthy to investigate and bring charges? Now, if your answer to that is because they're corrupt, the FBI wouldn't play along, the FBI, then just say, I do not believe that the Justice Department or the FBI can function in a way in which we can trust. Feel free to say it. But don't act as if somehow, hey, we have a whole lot of other things to get to before we get to this. Separate crimes are charged all the time, independent of other criminal activity. So, look, take people seriously when they make a claim, for sure, but they're not taking this seriously. Nobody I know. I mean, I got a laughing emoji back from my conversation partner about this when I said, "So you think we shouldn't charge any criminals then until we charge all the criminals?" Of course not. Nobody thinks that. So that kind of whataboutism. Fair point. Look, if some people are not prosecuted because of who they are and the role that they've held,
Yeah.
but the very thing that they're condemning in that argument, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, not charged because they're making political choices to not charge them, is exactly then what they're asking for the Justice Department to do in relationship to Donald Trump. Do not charge him because of his political position. Well, that makes no sense. We shouldn't have done it with Hillary Clinton. And there was at least 4 years when Hillary Clinton was in no position of government authority, and she could have been investigated. Not investigated, not charged. So the federal system decided to pass. The whole now you have another kind of whataboutism, Rob, and that's built around, well, Joe Biden had the documents, and this gets us now to the classification story.
Yeah.
So can we talk about this classification thing for a bit? Because there's also a myth in this world that
there's a couple of things that need to be said about this, but yes.
Yeah, Judge Jackson said that the president of the United States gets to determine what happens with documents. And okay, yes, the president of the United States, when they're the president of the United States, can declassify documents. Important point. Just because a document is declassified does not mean that that same document can be shared.
Yes.
And does not mean that that document can be kept by that former president.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with it. The charges against Trump are not simply that there were classification violations. It was the sensitivity of the documents, part of which is indicated by the classification, but not all of it. So there's plenty of things that you cannot share that do not carry a classification. Classification is just one measurement by which the government responds to these things. So when people say things like Trump declassified them, so therefore he can have them, those two things don't go together.
Nope.
They don't belong to him, and they're still national secrets that cannot be shared, whether they're classified, whether they have a classification or not, which is why all this stuff about the problem is overclassification doesn't really matter. That's an internal working system for the government. The point is that these are sensitive documents. Now, here's a little side tangent, and I'll let you say something here. If Trump took documents that could lead to hazard to the United States and declassified them when they shouldn't have been, that is a reckless and ill-advised move. To declassify something simply because you want to keep it is not something that any reasonable president should do. So first off, he did not declassify these. Secondly, if he did, he shouldn't have, because there's a process by which a reasonable declassification can take place. And third, it doesn't matter if he declassified them, because they're still government property that are still restricted in who's allowed to see them, whether they have a classification or not. So this whole declassification story, and the press, by the way, keeps using this language, keeps saying, well, the problem is these things were classified. And there are multiple problems. Trump's violations here are myriad. So there's a number of things going on. But that's where I think we are on this declassification thing. It doesn't matter for these charges that are brought, because the things that he was sharing still couldn't be shared, no matter if they're classified or not classified.
Yep. Yeah. If you read the indictment, you get that sense of like, oh, wait a minute, here's the problem. The violation of the Espionage Act and and the criminal conduct that he is accused of. Um, I say parenthetically, because he did it. Um,
Because the evidence seems to indicate so.
not even seems, uh, does. I know he is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Uh, in the court of this public opinion, he's guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the the laws that he is accused of violating have nothing to do with classification status.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have nothing to do with peeking at something that's classified. Now, uh, he did show classified documents to people who did not have that security clearance. Yes, he did that. Um, that's not what he's charged with, though. What he's
Yeah.
charged with has to do with the content of those documents,
Yeah. Right.
because he is mad at General Milley for suggesting that he wanted to invade Iran. And so he shows the journalists, the authors who are working on a book about Mark Meadows, apparently, who are there visiting him in New Jersey. He shows them military plans for how the United States would invade Iran, and says, Milley's the one who came up with this. Milley's the one who wants to invade Iran, not me. And so it has to do with him showing national security secrets
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
people,
Yes.
sharing national security secrets with people. Yeah, so you're
Which, to
absolutely
your
right about
point,
that.
is different than classified categorization. They're
Yes.
still military secrets. There,
Yes.
and I know, look, nobody should have to pay attention to this stuff. How does the federal government utilize national security secrets versus classification? That's a technical thing. We shouldn't all have to be worrying about that. There's people who do. The reason we have to talk about it is because these charges interact with both of those issues.
Mhm.
That Donald Trump is the one who's been claiming I declassified them so I can have, like, that whole thing, by the way, got introduced by Trump. Just remember, if you feel confused about all this, or other people are confused about it, remember the timeline on this. It's a document retention case, meaning Trump has kept things that belong to the federal government, regardless of their status of national security or classification. They don't belong to him. And when the government says, we want those back, you have to give them back. And then when the government says, here's a subpoena demanding the return of those and a categorization of what you have, and you lie about it in a court document and a certified, that then becomes obstruction of justice. And then when you tell your lawyer to maybe move them away, or you tell other aides to not let lawyers of your own lawyers find them because they're going to give them back, you are obstructing justice. Again, nothing to do with classification, not even anything to do with national secrets. There are at least 3 different degrees to which these same documents exist in the world. And that is so crucial, because what you're going to hear over and over and over from people who are in their grieving process is, he declassified them. And if you can say to them at all, you do know that declassification does not mean that you can still share them. And you do know that declassification doesn't mean that they now belong to Trump. It's not like he's at his grandmother's funeral, house after she died, and you're walking around with friends putting little sticky notes on the things you want. That's not how it works in the government.
So you watched the
don't get to
Succession finale,
yeah,
huh?
yeah. You don't just get to pick the things that you want and then say, well, I'm naming those are mine. That's not how documents work.
Yes.
They're
You're
always the possession and the ownership of the federal government via this very bizarre subset of the federal government, the archivist, who keeps track of all this stuff. Even if they're in your house, they're not yours.
Yeah. So
they belong to the government. That's the whole point. And if people lose honest to goodness, Rob, if people lose track of the fact that what this is about is that Donald Trump had things that were the federal government's, and when they asked for them back, he lied about having them because he thought he still wanted them or thought they should belong to him. And he was told in an affidavit presented to his lawyers to clarify, you cannot have these. He knew it and understood it and still kept them from the government. Just
Yeah.
just that is what's going on
Yeah.
with this crime.
So we have the upside down, the like absolute bizarro thing happening where Trump's supporters, Kimberly Guilfoyle and folks like that are going out and talking about why Trump should not have been charged, will talk a lot about the Presidential Records Act. They'll say,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, like the Presidential Records Act trumps this. The Presidential Records Act, gives him the right to this," which is like absolutely hilarious because what the Presidential Records Act does is it makes all documents produced by or for the President of the United States property of the United States government and not property of the president.
That's right.
And the reason this came about was because of Richard Nixon's tapes. And there was that sense of, wait a minute, if Richard Nixon is, taping what's happening on phone calls or in the Oval Office, we can't have a president doing that. So anything that's produced is property of the government. So this claim that the Presidential Records Act is going to be, the silver bullet that, keeps Donald Trump out of jail is just ridiculous on the face of it because it's the government's property. Now, folks have taken either on purpose or by accident, have taken documents, have taken things, and there's a certain elasticity, there's a certain grace period. There's like the National Archives will say, hey, we think you've got some stuff that you shouldn't have. And what has happened repeatedly is folks, when that is discovered, go, oh shoot, here they are, let me give those back to you, and they get returned without any problem. And it's like, okay, wish you hadn't done that, but no big deal, no harm, no foul.
Well, yeah, and even more specifically, part of what the Presidential Retention Act said was, hey, there's a period of time where the president is going to become the former president, and there's a window at which they need to go through their own documents and the ones owned by the government and make sense of them. Finding anything that still belongs to the company, like if you left your job and you're like, hey, I've got some stuff here that belongs to the company. What belongs to the federal government? You're supposed to take time to sort through that. You have to do this with your with your presidential library. You have to do this for a whole lot of reasons. So the expectation is that former presidents and even vice presidents and even senators will end up with things in their purview because there's so very many things. And then you're supposed to create some space and time and a process by which you go through those. And normally you work with the National Archivist to make sure that they know about everything and you know about everything. And you're working hand in hand with them to do this. And sometimes things get left in a garage or could be in a storage room or something. Like that's totally, of course, what should happen. But most of the time, people are not taking things that are of national security worries or are sensitive to only certain eyes seeing them. Then when a person is told, hey, we now want those to put them in your library or to put them in the archive, then you give them back. And if you didn't know you had something and you stumble on it, you're like, hey, I found another thing that's yours. Then you notify people and they come pick it up and they bring it back. That's what Mike Pence did. That's what Joe Biden did. That's probably what Barack Obama has done. That's probably what George Bush has done, Bill Clinton. That's just all normal. Of course, that's normal. What's not normal is taking these things, traveling around with them, showing them to people, and then not giving them back. Like,
Yes.
that's the whole thing. That's where these prosecutors are like, look, the crime is not that you read something that had classification on it. The problem is that you showed it to other people, and then when we asked for it back, you lied about having it. And you didn't lie once. You lied repeatedly. I gave you everything back, knowing that you didn't. Because look, in that indictment, Rob, there's this one line that says, at 12 noon Eastern time on January 20th, Donald Trump ceased to be the president of the United States. Did you notice that when you read the
Yes.
indictment?
Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, they are saying something right there. There is something about the timing of all of this. And my bet is they have documentation after that point at which Donald Trump indicates that these documents are still under a certain classification. Does that matter? In one portion of it, sure. He's going to be charged with a classification violation. But the case is not simply built on that. But they are trying to make a very specific point about when someone had the right to these documents and when they didn't, when you were in the role and when you were not. And the idea that now people are saying, well, Hillary Clinton should have done this or Joe Biden should have done this is irrelevant to the fact that Donald Trump did it. So, I mean, if they want, here's what all my friends want me to say, my Trump supporting, or my friends that say they're independents, and they're just like, well, it needs to be equal. 100% agree. It needs to be equal. Look into it. Deploy whatever number of resources you need to have to look into it. And if you determine that a crime was committed by Joe Biden, that a crime was committed by Hillary Clinton, by Mike Pence, charge it for sure. Who is saying you shouldn't? No one is saying you shouldn't. What people are saying is, oh, they have looked into it. They are looking into it. And what Donald Trump did was also looked into, and he's being charged. And they're saying, here's the funny thing. Okay. You saw it in your text that you read from Pastor Joe. He's saying Trump needs to be granted consideration that he's not guilty of something until he's proven guilty of it. But Joe Biden runs a crime family, and these things have all been proven. Oh, isn't that curious? You don't think anything's been proven against Donald Trump, but you're sure because of the media reports that you read and the blogs and the YouTube videos that it was proven that the 1023 document that the FBI won't turn over to Comer proves that Joe Biden runs a crime family. A document that literally, now I'm deep in the weeds on the Biden crime family thing because I know this world. A document that you've never seen because the FBI won't release it, and you're sure that that's proof that he runs a crime family, but the actual evidence that Donald Trump did the things that are listed in the indictment plus the other things we brought out in court are not proof that he did anything.
Yep.
Do you see what I mean? So look, we can
crystal
do
clear.
whataboutism all day long.
It's crystal clear.
Just keep doing it. Just keep talking about this, because at 3 o'clock today, the scales of justice are going to say, Donald Trump, you are not free to do what you want to do. You are now under the authority of this court because of the allegations brought against you by the federal government. And look, other people have been charged too. I mean, Jack Smith brought a case against John Edwards, former vice presidential candidate, for his behavior as a vice presidential candidate. He lost that case. Jack Smith lost the case that he brought against Jonathan Edwards, a Democrat. So these people charge and they lose. It's quite possible that the jury will find, caveat for a moment, like Padgett opinion, it's not going to a jury, but it's possible that evidence could be thrown out, that things can't be brought before a jury, and Donald Trump is found innocent. Okay, then you know what the rest of us are going to have to do is say, do we trust the system of justice or not? And this is another thing about the judge business, that people are complaining that the same judge now signed this case that had the documents case, and she had this ruling about the special master and was slapped down by the appeals court and all that stuff, and she should recuse herself. Look, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to fall down the slope of, well, justice is fair as long as we have the right judge. I mean, this whole thing that this is all just personality driven and that
Yeah.
judges make all the difference. And look, of course, judges make the difference. That's why we don't have AI running court cases. We're going to have human beings make decisions. But our system has to be considered just and fair no matter who's running it. And if it can be shown that someone is violating their oath or violating the expectation for them as a public servant in the law, okay, then remove them. We have a process for that. But I'll just say to all my like Trump needs to be prosecuted supporting friends, don't go down this road of starting to blame the judge and blaming the refs, because that's the very thing that Trump is trying to say is, I don't have to give them back to you because of who you are. I mean, we just cannot do that. We cannot go down that road. And Rob, I feel like there's going to be a small group of us at the end of the day that aren't just personalizing all of this stuff and making it all about just an individual choice
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
judge or an attorney or a prosecutor or
Yeah.
whatever.
So, I mean, a couple other pieces of drama that have happened with all of this. One is, out of everything that's taken place, um, initially the the draw for who would be the presiding judge, at least initially, at the beginning of this, was a Trump appointed judge who kind of had been slapped down
Yeah.
earlier in this case for decisions she had made. It appears now that she won't be presiding today, but it will be the kind of the head magistrate. Magistrate's a great word. Um, the other really amusing piece of news is that Trump is looking for a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's so
Literally,
funny.
there was
So
up
so there's
until
a couple
last
of
night,
things.
Rob, there was a conversation that this
Yeah,
hearing
could be
may not
delayed.
take place
Yeah.
because he may not have representation because he couldn't find an attorney in Florida to
Yes.
represent him. That has been solved as of like 11 o'clock last night. There was notification that came out. There's now an
Oh,
attorney of record, and this will move forward. But that's how
okay.
bad it is. He cannot find an attorney to represent him because he is going to ask them to say things that an attorney will not say. An attorney will not make an argument. He had the right to these documents because he
Yeah.
declassified them. It's not a legal argument. No one's going to make it. So he is in real trouble, which is why I think he's going to uh, uh, plead
Yeah.
guilty at some point.
So two of his once the indictment came out, two of his lawyers quit, and now this deal with him not being able to find. And you said I'm looking at a report right now that says he wasn't able to find an attorney yet,
Was that from
but
this
he
morning or from last night?
appears to be this morning, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, late last night it was. I watched some stuff this morning late last night. So this is anyway. It's on for
yeah.
today. He's
Yep.
he's going to have an attorney. Whether that attorney can, uh, represent him all the way through the case, who
Yeah.
knows? And look, it's not uncommon for someone in a complex case like or trial like this to switch up attorneys teams. Of course, no big deal. But when you're the former president of the United States, you should have at your disposal. And when you've been impeached twice, you've had
Oh,
attorneys working for you. When you have indictments that have already come in New York and more indictments that are coming, you should have
yeah.
a crack legal team. The problem is one of the witnesses in this case is his former attorney, who a federal appeals court confirmed that the client attorney privilege must be violated, must be broken rather,
Yeah.
because there's signs that criminality was taking place between the two. And Corcoran, the former attorney, is like, I'm not going down for this. I'll tell you everything that happened if a judge tells me I can. And they did, and he did, and that's that. I mean, that's why he's in such trouble here. Now, in the court case, if that were to get thrown out ultimately, if somehow the ruling judge says, I think that was a bad verdict, and so you can't bring any of that evidence in because that those judges shouldn't have allowed for the piercing of the client lawyer privilege, that will complicate things. But again, I just think we're not going to get to that point. Donald Trump will start negotiating immediately on what will it take to make him not have to face a trial and criminal penalties for this. There, and also, I mean, I've said it for years. This country cannot have former presidents in jail. Look, he may be remanded to custody and stayed at home like a lot of federal prisoners do, with an ankle bracelet. Maybe there's something that because he's under Secret Service, he's found guilty and then put under the custody of Secret Service, something like that. There's a way, but he's not going to, there's no jail door is going to close on Donald Trump. That would just be, there are other ways we treat criminals in our society, and we just shouldn't do that to a former president. There are just certain things that should be granted because of the position that a person has held. But
Yeah.
I think he's going to
So
negotiate that he can't hold public office. Because here's the other thing, Rob, that I think is important about this. Donald Trump could literally, by next November, by November 5th, 2024, have pled guilty or been found guilty by a jury, be a felon who cannot vote in the state of Florida or many other states in this country, and yet people can vote for him. He could be the first president who can't vote for himself, but could be voted for. Imagine that. There won't be a picture of him going on election day to vote, or him filling out his mail-in ballot, which he's a big fan of, and dropping it in the mailbox, because he will be a felon who can't vote, and yet he could be voted for. So do you think we'll ever get to the point where we will have state rules, state laws, federal laws that say that felons cannot be elected? In other words, if you can't vote, you can't be elected. Do you think we will ever get to the point where that would be where those two things would be brought into alignment?
yeah, I would imagine that there could be some states that would want to move in that direction, which would make it really difficult, for Trump to get to the number of electoral votes that he would need. So let's talk about the political implications of all of this. Chris Christie has made this really the center point of his presidential campaign. Some of the other Republican candidates for president, Asa Hutchinson, former governor of Arkansas, was really the first, along with Chris Christie, to come out and condemn Trump and say he should drop out.
Yeah.
Some of the others have kind of followed suit really tentatively. Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence continues to try to have it both ways. One of my favorite things was Mike Pence, his answer to a question about Trump being indicted during his CNN town hall, where he talks about how I just don't think we should have former presidents charged, and then he ends his whole paragraph of talking by saying, and it's so important that we have equal justice under the law. It's just like, come on, buddy.
Equal justice under the law, but former presidents shouldn't be charged for things
Yes.
that they do that other people do. I mean, one of the questions I ask my friends in this world, I'm like, hey, Trump flippantly said at a Christian college in Iowa, I've looked at the polling. I think I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any supporters. I said to them, if Donald Trump was charged with shooting someone on Fifth Avenue, would you then say he shouldn't be elected president? Nope, they still would. Truly, he was right. And that was in 2016. He is still, there are people, a hardwired group, for whom it truly does not matter.
Yeah. And
what he does, because he shouldn't be charged. He should be above it all, no matter what.
Yeah. Many, going back a couple of years on this podcast, we interviewed a lady who is an expert on cults. And we talked about the cultism that surrounds Donald Trump. And one of the things that she said is that happens so often, like we have bemoaned this many times of like, okay, what's going to be the thing that gets through to
Yep.
people? Um, you know, is it going to be January 6th? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? Is it going to be, finally, they're going to read the indictment. This will finally get through to them. Or Donald Trump will be convicted by a jury of his peers. That will finally, and I go back and remember what she told us about cultists, people that are in cults. Um, when the spaceship doesn't arrive to take them to the next
Mm-hmm.
galaxy, when the prediction of the world ending on a particular date doesn't come true, when those moments that for someone else would be an inciting moment that changes the trajectory of their belief system. And what she said happens is that so often people who are a part of cults, in those moments, they double down.
Yep.
They double down. They um, just absolutely refuse to see facts, to interpret the story in any way that would call into question, because maybe they don't want to be embarrassed, they don't want to admit that they were wrong, they can't imagine life differently than they've been living it in some way. um, Whatever it might be, there is such a delusion
Mm-hmm.
that what you see is this tendency to double down. And there is, while so many of us um, are just deeply, deeply concerned about the future of the country and see significant danger in all of this Donald Trump stuff, um, there is a disturbingly high percentage of people
Mm-hmm.
that are going to double down. That, like, nothing that happens is going to shake them. And, they will continue to fight into the bitter end, whatever that might look like. And that's
Yeah.
deeply concerning.
Right. And normally what happens when people do this, and this is not just true of people that are in formal cults, but any kind of belief system that uh, has sort of performative power in someone's life, right? Like it's not
Mhm.
just a thing you happen to believe, but it's an operating system belief. When evidence is shown that the thing you believe in is not true. Um, I heard a great podcast about a woman who was scammed by a scammer and kind of
Mhm.
a fake love affair thing. And I mean, she just talked very openly about it and about how it went. The what starts to happen is people start to move around the rationale. They move away from evidence and into a value system.
Yes.
And this is precisely what you see happening when people, the whataboutism is actually, I know to a lot of us we feel like hearing people what about things, and people are doing it in the stream here. I'm trying to put some of those up when I see them. That's actually part of the process of letting go of a belief and a commitment, that you start to say, well, but there's still something important here, right? Like we have to have equal justice. You can hear the Republican political peoples doing this stuff. Well, I still think we have overcharging and we have an unjust criminal system. Okay, yeah, that's a true thing. So you've moved now from, you believed something to be true. Now, instead of saying that's not true, you hopscotch to another square that says, but here is the thing I think is true. So you're not, that's just how we do it as human beings. You don't let go of an idea, you swap an idea that you can believe in for another idea you can believe in. We tend to critique that. We are here, and I'm pushing back on it hard and want to because we have to. Because if people don't recognize that that's what they're doing. So if someone says, okay, but at the end of all this, Trump does need to be prosecuted, but don't we also need to look at other things and make sure the system is fair? Now, anybody who's had a family member charged and other people have done the same thing and weren't charged, you feel this sense of injustice, right? So you then move from one belief system of truth and support to another one, and then you will move to another one. Now, at some point, it just maybe all breaks down and people move into huge regret. And as Kimberly put here, they double down until they commit self-harm kind of thing. Yeah, that's also but your average person, what we do is we shift to something else. Think about someone who is betrayed in a love relationship, a married person, someone has an affair. A lot of us know people, or people listening to this, I'm sure, have experienced it themselves. Just watch the process that you go through. Who is this person? How could they do this? This can't possibly be true. Are you sure? I mean, literally wake up sometimes in the middle of the night thinking, maybe it didn't happen. Maybe I got it wrong. But you're like, the person confessed and you're still thinking, maybe it didn't happen. And then instead of just burning it all down and just never speak to this person again and cut them out of your life, you're like, hey, there were still some things that I thought were pretty great about our relationship. But all in all, you're not this and that. And that's where, when they hear people like us talking about all the ways that we think Donald Trump is a real problem. And look, I've said since 2016, this man is a threat to the well-being of the planet and everyone who lives on it. We have to organize in every possible way to be sure he does not have the levers of power. I truly do believe he is a threat. But other people just see that as nothing but just sheer and they don't want to jump on the bandwagon of everything he did was a threat to the well-being of. They want to be very targeted in, we're still holding to something valuable, that we're overcharging and that things aren't fair, and we can get to this. Now, will Republicans ultimately get to this point? I think they will. Not all of them. They won't all say it in the way that I want them to. I think they will get to the point where they say, yeah, Donald Trump cannot be the president of the United States because of that thing that he did. And then they'll have a revision of it later and say, yeah, but he had to plead guilty because they brought the force of the government on him and they shouldn't have, and they kind of overcharged him, and all the Richard Nixon stuff, right? All the Ronald Reagan stuff, all the Bill Clinton stuff, for those of us, who supported Bill Clinton and then watched him lie in a court of law and then lose his law license and be impeached, and all of that are like, yeah, but there's still, so, grant people a little space here, that people are like, this is how this is going to go. But what you can't let people do is just make arguments that are not what the thing is about. Now, if you recognize that someone's just grieving here, okay, give them a minute, but don't let people get stuck in that grief and then start to believe that, the whole thing is corrupt. Because to me, the space, Rob, between what you're describing there of somebody in a cult and somebody who's just like, no, I think the whole thing is so corrupt, there is no way we can have law. Okay, that anarchist view, and look, runs deep in the Republican subculture, the libertarian anarchist view. It's like, hey, the federal government should not have the power to take people's liberty. A deep libertarian argument. They shouldn't take your money, and they shouldn't be able to take your liberty. That is, that runs deep. And there's a lot of that going on right now. And I don't know what's going to happen today. Now, we're now 5 hours away from Donald Trump being, 4 hours away from Donald Trump being taken into federal custody and then likely released on the same day. I don't think we're going to get a Waco out of this.
Yeah.
But you do know that there's people on the right who talk about Waco. Where did Donald Trump have his first campaign event of 2023? In Waco. Why does Donald Trump pick Waco, Texas as his launching point? Because he wants to conjure up Waco, Texas, and the Branch Davidian compound that was attacked by the federal forces in order to, take the guns that were in there after a long standoff. That's what Trump was conjuring up. And all the people in that world know it. So they have a direct line from Waco to Timothy McVeigh all the way to January 6th. It's all part of the same narrative for these folks. And Trump is absolutely conjuring that up with his team. It is not an accident. And they do things to honor those days on the calendar. So look, in fact, I think they were there in Waco on the anniversary of that attack. So is Donald Trump truly wanting to stir up some kind of an anti-government? The government does not have the right to take our liberty, cannot take our guns, cannot take our money through taxes, and cannot take our liberties? totally that's what he's doing. And so if Republicans want to go down that line, they certainly can. But I think they need to look at that really closely. And if you're talking to any friends or family, you might feel like you're talking like the wacko person when you start bringing this stuff. You feel a little wacko when you start talking about Waco. But I suggest that you do it and say to people, are you suggesting that the federal government should not have the right to do this because you think that their behavior has been so ill-founded that you can't?
Yeah. Do you expect violence today, Doug?
I don't. I don't think there's even enough anger and anger about all this. I don't think there's enough planning time. I think that people in Florida don't. I don't think they feel that attacking the courthouse in Florida is like attacking the Capitol, because I think there's just a whole lot of things that are keep that from happening. Now, will there maybe be some skirmishes among protesters and counter protesters? I don't know. Maybe. I'm guessing the Miami police know how to deal with this kind of stuff and will keep those people apart. But I think people are looking at more than 1,000 people imprisoned already, and maybe 1,000 prosecutions coming for January 6th. And people are like, yeah, no, we're not. I know the federal government shouldn't be able to take my liberty, but I don't want them to do the thing they shouldn't be able to do. I don't want them to be able to do that to me. So I don't think so. I think it's going to be people standing outside yelling and all the rest. But look, we're going to spend the next 2 years traveling around the country and saying, do you want to elect a person who chose to do this, this, and this? And I don't think Donald Trump has a chance. Will he get the Republican nomination? Probably will be in the running for it, and then we'll drop out of the race, and that'll cause all kinds of chaos because he will have a plea deal. That's my guess. There is no world in which, and I've been wrong about lots of things in Donald Trump, but there's no world in which more people in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, there's no chance that in those states more people say, oh, now I'm going to vote for Donald Trump after the insurrection, after he lost the election, after he's been charged with crimes in New York, after he's been found guilty of sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll, after he's been charged on 30-some federal charges. There's no way there are more people who are saying, oh, no, I would vote for him. I didn't vote for him last time, but I will this time. That is not going to happen. Could Biden lose so much support that that number becomes a smaller number? But less people are going to vote for Donald Trump in those states. Will more people vote for him in some states? Maybe. Will he get more votes? I don't know, in Texas or
but he's not going to be
Oklahoma or
running
Arkansas.
against Joe Biden. He's going to be running against Gavin Newsom. But
well, he's going to be running against the federal government. He's going to be running against Jack Smith. He's going to be running against.
We'll have to. We're way over time. So.
But this is a special day. This is special. By the way, special coverage of the United States.
Yeah.
And by the way, we start the counter now because today is the day. I mean, the indictment being announced on Thursday and then revealed on Friday. That's not when the timer starts. The timer starts when Donald Trump is brought into custody. So today, I think within 300 days of today, Donald Trump will have pled guilty. But we need to keep a timer
311.
going. 311 days. But I think that within that we need to keep a counter going of the United States of America versus Donald J. Trump. I mean, whatever signs people are going to hold at protests, that should be one. The United States of America, because I do feel like this is the United States of America's future versus Donald Trump's future. I really do think that statement codifies what situation we're dealing with. Now, hey, do you think we're going to get Georgia indictment? Do you think then we're going to get a January 6th indictment? Because I'll tell you, one of the things that could get really weird for people is how many indictments are they going to bring? Like at some point, too many in the public view just starts to become ridiculous to people.
Yeah, why are you picking on this guy?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, until you realize, well, this is what happens when you commit crimes before you're in office, while you're in office, after you're in office. Those are all separate crimes, and the guy is such a criminal. I truly believe that these indictments reflect what he has done, and it's going to be a real thing. Hey, people are asking, where is Dan?
Where's Dan?
Where's Dan? I haven't seen Dan for 2 weeks. Where is Dan? People want to know. Free Dan. I've heard there's a whole free Dan movement that's afoot. Hey, Dan will be back. Dan's just had a couple of months off here because of stuff in the Vote Common Good funding world, but Dan will be back. Probably, most likely. I mean, unless he just, has just enjoyed his time not having to deal with all this. So Dan will be back, but we've been in some summer months here. So for all kinds of reasons that have to do with how we run our operation, Dan is on Dan hiatus for a little bit. So could be back any day now. Who knows? Yeah, just keep up. Like, oh, is Dan there today? You know, it'd be great. Kimberly, others, you guys check in here. You say, oh, looking around, was Dan there? And then you just write a comment, oh, still no Dan, and then you log off. You know, just really send us that message that you really want. You really want Dan. All right. Well, lots of comments today. Lots of stuff going on. Some new people around. Anne, nice to see you. Walter,
Rick,
it was
Mike,
nice to see you. Yeah.
Yabbits was back this week. Good to see you, Yabbits. Kevin, Sandra.
Hey, by the way, on this same channels, wherever you're seeing this afternoon at 5:30 Central Time, 6:30 on the East Coast, 4:30 in the mountains, and somewhere in Arizona, who knows, and 2:30 on the West Coast, and I don't know what time in Hawaii, and I don't know about Puerto Rico because I can't remember what time zone it is there, or the Samoas. But 5:30 Central Time, 6:30 Eastern Time, we'll be back on here with the thing that's part of our little sub-brand of the Vote Common Good world called Catholics Vote Common Good. And we're going to have a former congressman in a town hall with us. Tom, the congressman, was the person who was in the seat that George Santos is now in. Tom decided to run for governor, gave up that seat, and that gave us George Santos. So he'll be on. Some words for him about that. Hear a little bit about that. And Congresswoman Rosa from Connecticut's going to be on. So anyway, a little conversation. These same places will be on with the launch of the Catholics Vote Common Good effort. So if you're Catholic or not, and you're just interested in that conversation, we will be back at 6:30, 5:30, 4:30, 2:30, whatever time it is, where you are, but 6:30 Eastern Time. We'll be back on these same places. And of course, they'll be recorded, and you can always watch them later. And do share this podcast with other people if you want to. Anything else, Rob? If we go 3 more minutes, we can get to 90 minutes. We could really.
Well,
no, we're only at an hour 22. We'd have to go 8 more minutes.
It's
not worth that.
I'm good then.
Not worth that. All right, everybody. Hey, see you later. Literally later today.